This loser has never seen the sun, but when he's suddenly isekai'd into a medieval world with summoning powers, he gets a second chance to finally touch some grass. This story begins as our protagonist's favorite game shuts down all of its servers. With the game gone, the protagonist realizes that he will have to touch grass if he doesn't find another game soon that needs 10 years to beat. So, he gets to searching for a hardcore game on the internet and comes across a game that claims to have no ending. With the protagonist's interest already at its peak, he starts feeling like he's up for a real challenge. So he chooses the hardest difficulty Hell mode, and also the hardest class Summoner, but the second he hits play, the computer literally absorbs him inside the game world and basically reincarnates him as a newborn youngling. His father is happy to learn that he's gotten a son and names him Alan. Alan receives a lot of love from both his parents, so he feels glad even though he's born into a poor farmer's family. Over the next couple of months, he learns that he is currently in a rural village where most of the people cultivate land and pay taxes to their feudal lord. Alan's dad Rodin is a farmer, and his mother Teresia is a housewife. Since both Rodin and Teresia are in their early 20s, Alan believes that he will soon have younger siblings and can't wait to become part of a bigger family. One night, Alan recalls the basic isekai trope and uses the command stat window open. It works, but instead of a holographic system menu popping up, a grimoire appears, causing Alan to freak out. He quickly uses the command stat window close before his parents come in and pretends as if he's asleep. After making sure the parameters are clear, he summons the grimoire again and goes through its pages. The first page has Alan's stats written down, and as expected, all of them are at the lowest rank. The next page entails the details of Alan's summoning skill, and reading it, Alan learns that he apparently is already able to summon H-ranked insects and beasts. The book suddenly glows and flips itself to a new page. It's a message from Elmia, the creator of this world, who explains that the summoner class is still under beta testing, so he apologizes if Alan faces any difficulties because of his chosen class. Alan doesn't care about the message and proceeds to summon an insect, but no matter how many times he tries the incantation, the summoning spell just doesn't work. Alan thinks hard for a solution and realizes that perhaps he needs to create the relevant beast first. So he creates an H-ranked insect card, but as he's about to summon the beast, he notices that his mom, Teresia, is coming. So he pretends to be asleep again, but ends up actually falling asleep. The next early morning, Rodin goes outside and starts chopping wood, while Teresia gets to cleaning their clothes. As both parents are busy outside, Alan uses this opportunity and uses the insect summoning spell, causing his room to be filled with luminescent balls of spirits. Fortunately for Alan, his mom isn't paying attention, so he quickly gets on with it. And as the spirit balls are condensed once again, they manifest into a cat-sized grasshopper. Seeing its angry expression, Alan wonders if this creature will even listen to his commands. He decides to still give it a try and with his half-broken youngling voice, orders the bug to fly to his hands. The bug, however, turns the other way, making Alan wonder if it's dumb or something. He suspects that the reason the grasshopper isn't listening to his commands must be because he hasn't met the necessary conditions yet. So he checks the grimoire and looks at the grasshopper's stat menu. He picks the name Denka for the green bug and then looks at its stats, when he learns that this tiny little insect actually gives him +1 endurance and agility. This fact causes Alan to blurt out the word awesome on impulse, prompting his mom to enter the room. Seeing the ugly insect grosses Teresia out, and she instinctively stomps on it. Despite this accident, Alan continues to test his summoning skill whenever he gets the opportunity, and one day, decides to summon a beast. A white rat comes out, and as expected of an H-rank beast, it's also dumb as bricks, just like Denka. Still, Alan gives it the name Mousy, and then looks at its stats when he learns that it actually has an ability called Scurry. Alan manages to activate this ability, causing Mousy to scurry around him. This makes him wonder what kind of strong monsters he can potentially summon and control. For now, he can only create a total of 10 summoning cards, so he creates 10 Mousy cards, and as a result, his attack stats get a plus boost because of Mousy's buff. With this boost, he can now easily chop wood even though he's only a year old, but he still doesn't think it's enough. This makes him wonder how much easier the game would have been if he had chosen any other difficulty, so he regrets picking Hell mode. Rodin comes back home with myoglobin all over him, making Teresia worry if he's hurt, but Rodin claims to be fine, explaining that he went to a boar hunt earlier which caused this. Rodin asks Alan if he'd like to see the boar they've hunted down, and as Alan excitedly nods, Rodin carries him to the place where the beast is being carved up. On their way there, they see a flock of birds called alba herons, who are no less than dinosaurs in size, so Rodin refers to them as monsters. Rodin tells Alan a fun fact, saying that he named him after those birds, hoping that he too would live a free life and fly around wherever he wants to in this world. He sleeps off on Rodin's hands as Rodin walks to take him to his creature. When they eventually arrive at the location, Rodin wakes him up and shows him the great boar. When he touches the great boar, the first thing he thinks about is the fact that the monster is so great, and he doubts that he can successfully defeat that kind of monster. One of their neighbors, Gerda, walks up to Rodin and hypes him up as the star of the day. The other villagers there hail Rodin because that kind of victory isn't one that anyone can achieve, so Rodin had done so well. Gerda notices Alan and comments on Alan's black hair and eyes. Alan greets him in return, and he is shocked that Alan can talk at the age of 1. He comments that Alan is growing so much better than Krita, his daughter, who is about the same age as Alan. Alan asks about the Great Boar and how strong it is. So Gerda explains that the Great Boar is a C-ranked monster. It isn't something that a person can single-handedly handle, and it needs about 20 men to kill it. This only gives Alan enough opportunity to gauge himself and think of how he could be better. 10 months pass by as fast as possible, and Alan is now 1 year and 10 months old. He keeps trying his hand at his skills, and he realizes that he can now summon G-ranked monsters. He can also successfully fuse together H and G rank monsters. He has cards of both H and G ranked monsters and checks his cards, then tries to use his newly acquired power, but he gets a notification that he has low MP. He assumes the problem is hunger, so he goes to eat his meal. He rushes a huge plate of food, and his parents look visibly concerned, but he returns to his room immediately to check his powers. When he tries to fuse the cards again, it doesn't work. Again, he has low MP. He considers summoning another card, but again, he has low MP. Eventually, he gives up on it. 3 years pass by, and Alan is now 3 years old. He has gained enough strength and MP, and he can now fuse together his 2 cards. He fuses a G rank and an H rank card and gets a GH card, then he summons a pet from the card. He successfully summons a bird G, and he is excited. The bird, which he names Chappie, is level 2 in agility and strength, and it also has the skill Voice Mimic, which makes Alan assume that he could validly use it against enemies when fighting. Alan goes outside with his new pets. The first one is Hoppy, a tiny bird that hops. He asks Hoppy to hop, and he hopes to use the hopping to distract his opponents. The next is Molly, a pet that has the ability to dig. He asks Molly to dig, and Molly digs a hole, which he hopes to use to set a trap for his enemies. As he plans his imaginary life, he mistakenly falls into the hole that Molly had dug. This brings him back to the reality that he is just a child, and he can't even fight anyone. It is 3 p.m., and this brings him more worries. He hears the voice that worries him and knows that she is around. The voice belongs to Krita, Gerda's daughter, as she is there to play with him as usual. They play night games every day, so they both set out their swords to fight. Krita is faster than he can imagine, and she has so much strength that she overpowers the reincarnated protagonist. After hitting him as much as she could, with no defense on his side, he falls down flat and loses the game. His parents arrive, and Teresia's stomach is now as big as he had earlier predicted, which means a sibling is coming. Teresia and Rodan ask Krita to return home, and they also go home. During dinner, Alan suggests to his father that he would like to follow him to the farm to help with the harvest since his mother is pregnant and won't be able to help. Rodan refuses his offer, and Teresia also insists that she is strong enough to continue. They appreciate the fact that he has been helping with the house chores, but he is still a kid, and a 3-year-old boy shouldn't be on the farm. To him, he already has the strength of an adult and can take the burden off them. However, he understands that they wouldn't want him to do that, because no parents would want to subject their child to such a thing. Teresia tells him to continue playing with Krita. They comment about his night games with Krita and how good they are. Rodan informs him that with their present skills, they can't wait to see what their abilities will be during the appraisal ceremony. Alan doesn't know about it, so Rodan explains that when they clock the age of 5, a ceremony will be held where they will learn what skills they have. If they get good skills, they will be able to break out of serfdom. Rodan also comments that he has been seeing Alan throwing stones at the tree outside and inquires why. Alan lies that it is because they told him there are monsters outside, so he wants to throw stones at them to protect his mother. The real reason he has been throwing stones is to confirm if he has any other skills besides summoning. The following day, he practices his summoning. He has gotten to the stage where he can summon all day without getting tired. He looks at his aunt, Denka too, but gets distracted when Krita arrives. They go for their usual duel, and as usual, he loses and falls. Rodan arrives, and Teresia comes to greet him. Unfortunately, Denka hops onto her, and she falls in fear. She recovers after the scare jump, but suddenly gets severe stomach aches. Her water has broken, and the baby is on its way. Rodan commissions Krita to get her mother, Matilda, while he takes Teresia to the bed. Trying to help in his own way, Alan helps to boil water. He goes to inform them that the water is hot, and coincidentally, Matilda arrives too. She sends the men out of the room and helps Teresia with the delivery. The men are almost asleep outside the house when Teresia gives birth, and they call them in excitedly. Alan now has a brother, and Rodan names the child Mash, a name that Teresia questions, asking if it isn't also the name of a monster. Rodan reacts with a smile that shows her she is right. Seeing the excitement on everyone's face, Alan wonders why he was reincarnated. Removing the fact that he is a game addict who just wanted to level up into a new game, he was nothing but a work addict who was lonely and lived a poor life in his previous world. There is nothing for him to miss in that life, and if he is being fair, he loves the idea of his new family. For now, all he wants to do is get his family out of serfdom. Teresia calls him to greet the baby. He goes to greet the child, who bursts into tears. He is terrified by this, and they jokingly tell him that kids are just like that. Alan is undoubtedly enjoying his new life. However, fingers crossed to see his growth. Alan is now 5 years old, and he is going to a special event with his father, Rodan. The event is called the appraisal ceremony, and it is basically a talent test for 5-year-olds. Since everyone from farmers to nobles participates in this ceremony, there's a high chance to make good connections in society if the participant turns out to be talented, so Rodan hopes that when Alan gets appraised, he will receive good stats. Rodan really wishes for his son to achieve something greater and prays to God that his firstborn doesn't have to become a farmer like him. Rodan mentions to Alan that if he turns out to be gifted or talented, he will not only make friends, but enemies as well. In any case, they keep walking when they run into Gerda and his daughter Krina, who's sitting on top of his shoulders. Seeing them, Alan realizes that they too must be going to the appraisal ceremony, which means that Krina is also a 5-year-old like him. They reach the commoner village shortly after, and Alan becomes amazed seeing so many houses stacked together. While he's taking it all in, Krina expresses her desire to become a knight, so she hopes she becomes appraised as a swordsman. Her father laughs in a self-deprecating manner, as it is kind of impossible to get such a rare class. They come before a rusty-looking church where many other parents have gathered with their younglings. Most of the people there are commoners and are still considered above Alan's class since he's a serf. He's honestly surprised to be anywhere near them and is somewhat jealous to see how clean their clothes are. Several bystanders notice Alan's dirty, half-torn clothes and call him all sorts of names. Alan gets mad but doesn't say anything to them, as his existence is still worthless and he can get his head removed if he speaks to even commoners out of his turn. Anyway, the gate of the church opens and 3 priests come out, reminding everyone present that their god Elmea has blessed them all equally with a golden opportunity because even serfs have a history of becoming heroes. Most of the people were unaware of this and don't believe the priests initially, so the priests give Classis the Saintess as an example, revealing that she was a commoner by birth. She further mentions Dverg, the Sword Lord, who was a serf by birth. Hearing this, Alan hopes that he will get the Sword Lord class since he's the main character, but what he's forgetting is that he is playing this game on Hell mode difficulty. Everyone heads inside and stands before the statues of the 3 gods worshipped in this world. The priests begin the ceremony by calling Palomas, the son of the village chief, to the stage. As Palomas places his hands on the crystal ball, it starts to glow and shows his stats on a grimoire above. After a quick analysis, the priests determine that Palomas has the talent to become a merchant. The chief is astounded by the news and hugs his son immediately, thanking him in the heavens for such great news. Alan doesn't understand what there is to be excited about, because anyone can become a merchant, right? He suspects that perhaps having any talent can be considered a cause for celebration and becomes happy, as he's certain that he will get an above-average class. Anyway, the second boy takes the appraisal test, but as it turns out, he doesn't possess any talents at all, giving everyone a reality check that not everyone is going to be blessed today. The third youngling, Dagora, gets the axe user class, but after that, it's just no talent after no talent. Krina's turn comes up next, and as she excitedly places her hand on the crystal ball, it illuminates the entire room with a blinding light. The grimoire shows that she has an S-ranked stat, and the priest's immediate reaction is that this is a miracle. The priest, with pure shock in his eyes, declares that Krina has been appraised as the Sword Lord. Everyone's happy, but not Krina, as she really wanted to be a swordsman. What she doesn't realize is that she's not only going to be a swordsman, but there's a big chance that she will become the greatest swordsman to have ever lived. Her father doesn't bother explaining anything to her, as he's too busy celebrating. Alan is happy for her and can't wait to see how ridiculously overpowered she becomes in the future. His turn comes up next to take the test, and he assumes that he will get the summoner class, but as he places his hand on the crystal ball, it doesn't glow at all. At first, that is. Seconds later, the crystal ball glows so brightly that the light's energy itself sends Alan flying away into the distance. Alan doesn't even check if he got hurt and gets up immediately to ask the priest which talent he got. The priest stays silent for 5 seconds to add suspense, only to reveal that Alan possesses no talent. As the status board is revealed, it can be seen that Alan has E-ranked HP, E-ranked MP, E-ranked attack, E-ranked endurance, and E-ranked luck. The list keeps going. At the end of the list, where the class is written, there's only a bunch of gibberish, which leaves Alan wondering if this is a glitch or something. He's visibly frustrated and curses the game developers, also known as the gods, for ruining his it moment. Rodan, out of nowhere, grabs Alan and, hiding his pain with a soft smile, tells him that they should go home now. Once they return, they are welcomed back by Teresia and Mash, who were waiting for them for hours. As Rodan doesn't mention anything about the ceremony, Teresia doesn't ask anything. Neither she nor Rodan ever had any expectations of Alan to begin with, and they clarify that no matter what, he will always be their pride and joy. Later at night, Alan figures out that the reason all of his stats are at rank E is because he is playing in Hell mode. That's why even though he has grinded EXP as much as he could these past 5 years, his skills have not leveled up. He doesn't wish to have any regrets though, and being a hardcore gamer, decides to dedicate his life to becoming better than everyone, even if it means that he'd have to go through hellish training. The next day, everyone in the village is invited to Krina's house, as she and her family are celebrating her getting the Sword Lord class. Ever since Krina has found out that her class is way better than the swordsman class, she's been feeling like she's at the top of the world. Krina's mom boasts that the village chief has given them a rare bottle of alcohol for them to enjoy, and hearing that, Rodan feels so jealous that he refuses to give it a try. Krina's dad, Gerda, has had enough of Rodan's BS, and he confronts Rodan, exposing him to everyone there by saying that Rodan told him earlier that he wished to cut ties with Krina's family. Rodan explains his reasons, stating that since Krina will become nobility in the future, neither she nor her family should be wasting their time being friends with serfs. so he believes he is doing all of them a favor, but the problem is, no one asked him. The two lads end up getting into a fight, and this causes Alan to get a headache. To break them up, he asks Krina to use her swordsmanship talent, but the wifeys step in before her and give both of the men a good long beating. After everything is taken care of, Krina's mom laughs and mentions that Rodan and Gerda used to fight all the time in their teenage days, and that's why they still behave like that sometimes. Teresia mentions that the four of them were actually friends since their youngling days. Apparently, when this village was formed a decade ago, all of them worked together and built identical houses for fun. Both Rodan and Gerda look back to those days and admit that although they had to put in a lot of effort to build this village, they had a lot of fun together. As the two friends reconcile, they end up drinking together and feel its taste for the very first time in their lives. The next morning, both Gerda and Rodan get back to work as usual, when suddenly Gerda gets the news that the Order of Knights will be coming soon to meet Krina. While everyone waits for the Order of Knights, the axe user boy approaches Rodan to bully him for no reason. He calls Rodan a talentless surf loser, and that instantly triggers Krina, who can't wait to give this guy a good beating. But at that moment, the Order of Knights arrives, silencing everyone with their presence. The sword master Zenoff, who's also the captain of the knights, is with the squad, and he tells the poor girl that she will have to face one of his knights in a fencing duel to test if she actually possesses the acclaimed sword lord talent. Gerda refuses to allow this, since his daughter's life will be at stake, but Zenoff doesn't care. He makes it clear that if they refuse to let her fight, he will execute her and her family without any hesitation. Krina doesn't care about life or death, she just wants to hold a real sword, so she agrees to fight and faces a knight called Librand. As their duel begins, Krina shows off how talented she is, but of course, physically she is no match for a fully grown knight. But the second she gets cornered, her talent activates and she ferociously strikes the knight, defeating him with much ease. With this, Captain Zenoff confirms that Krina is the real deal, so he moves forward and goes to discuss Krina's future with Gerda at the village chief's house. Once everyone is gathered there, he gets up and declares that with his lord's approval, he is naming this place Krina Village from now on. He then apologizes to Gerda for putting Krina through such a harsh trial, but explains that it was necessary to check whether she and her family were lying about her class. Nevertheless, he tells Gerda to continue taking proper care of Krina and advises him to send her to the academy once she turns 12. The axe user boy, Ghidorah, speaks out of his turn and asks Zenoff if it's possible for him to get admitted as a student at the academy as well, and Zenoff replies that it is indeed possible if he passes the entrance exam. Krina tells Alan to study hard as well so that they all can go to the academy. Only then does Zenoff notice Alan and his father, Rodan. Zenoff recognizes Rodan as the village legend who slayed the great boar, so he shows him his respect, and in the end, Rodan is happy that a lowly serf like him got acknowledged by such a big shot. Alan has just leveled up and he is excited. He sees that his summon skills and enhancement skills have improved, which means he can now summon enhanced creatures. He also notices that he can now summon F-ranked creatures, and that excites him even more. This means he can do to them the same thing he did to his pet, Chappie. In his excitement, he wonders what kind of creature he will summon next. He considers the idea of summoning a dragon, an idea which, in my opinion, is not too bad. He entertains the thought in his heart, but immediately cautions himself, realizing that it would be an overreach. He thinks about his slow growth. It took him 2 good years to improve his skills, and even now, he is still level 1 with no experience. There is some good news regardless, because his pages have increased and he can now summon more. He returns to join his parents during dinner. Teresia's baby kicks, and she comments on it. While Alan looks at the plates so he can pick them up, his brother wonders whether they will be getting a new brother or a sister. Based on how soft the baby's kicks are, Teresia concludes it will be a girl. With the due date drawing closer, Rodan also begins thinking about what name to give the child. Around the same time, Alan opens his book and sees Elmai on his status. He calls out the name, and his parents immediately caution him that he should not call the Lord's name in vain. The timing is unfortunate because he was not even trying to name anyone. He looks at Rodan and notices that his injury has healed. When he mentions it, Rodan reveals that he passed the trial of the gods during their boar hunt earlier that day. Alan does not understand what that means, so Rodan explains. The trial of the gods is a period during hunting where hunters become filled with power, and all injuries on their bodies instantly heal. Alan immediately realizes that it is similar to leveling up on his own status board. He knows that his father must have high stats because of the experience he gains from hunting, especially as an experienced boar hunter, but he cannot see Rodan's stats. He reflects again on his own slow leveling. After several years, he is still level 1, and his experience points remain at 0. He knows he cannot gain experience unless he goes out to hunt, so he talks to Rodan about it. Rodan refuses immediately. He reminds Alan that hunting is a life and death experience. It is not a joke, and people can lose their lives. For that reason, he will not allow him. One of the most frustrating things about being a serf is that they cannot leave their village without permission, except for hunting. While thinking about his circumstances, Alan goes to bed. Later that night, he checks his book again. He had made a complaint earlier, and he now sees that it has been rectified. He checks his stats and notices that they have increased considerably for a summoner. He then sees that he has a new card. It is a card for an insect called Denka. It has +1 endurance and agility, which makes him assume it will be stronger than usual. He summons the insect, but it looks completely normal. Unfortunately, his mother suddenly enters the room and asks why he is not asleep. Thinking Denka is just an ordinary insect, she screams and crushes it with her foot. The following day, they see Rodan off as he goes hunting. Alan steps out of the house exhausted. He had spent the entire night summoning and unsummoning. From this, he learns new things, one of which is that enhancement cards do not disappear as long as he has MP. After finishing his daily tasks, he continues experimenting with summoning. He tries fusing different items together to see what would happen, but nothing works. As a last resort, he fuses 2 identical creations together. For the first time, the fusion succeeds. It creates a being that still resembles an insect. He is shocked to see that its MP is higher than expected, so he summons it. The creature looks like an apple with wings, and it has the skill Aroma. He names the apple Apo because it looks like an apple. He orders it to show off, but to his shock, the apple burrows into the ground and plants itself. It transforms into a leaf that gives off a pleasant smell. At first, Alan is excited that the bare land in front of their house might become beautiful. However, he quickly reminds himself that he is not a farmer. Teresia comes to call him for lunch. He immediately tries to command the leaf to return to its card, but it does not respond. She notices the plant and admits that it smells good. Alan later goes to have his usual duel with Kreda. Despite putting up resistance that day, he still loses as usual. However, Kreda comments that he was much harder to defeat than he normally is. Alan checks his stats and sees that his sword skills have increased. He is clearly stronger, but he does not know the cause. He wonders if Apo could be responsible. He then thinks about his first creation, Fido, and remembers that it has a skill called Champ. He admits that he has never tested it because he does not want to use it on humans. After that, he continues throwing stones at a tree. To his surprise, despite all his training, his stats do not increase. Mash eventually gets tired of waiting and urges him to leave. Alan reflects on the fact that he has to take care of Mash and his pregnant mother. He realizes he does not have time to waste throwing stones if it no longer affects his stats. Still, he feels reluctant to stop because throwing stones is something he has done for a long time. Mash leaves him to check the flowers. Before long, Apo has created a garden around the house, taking up space. Alan checks his stats to understand Apo's effect and discovers that it reduces his HP recovery time from 6 hours to 5. Even so, this does not truly give him more time. He returns home to Teresia, and together they wait for Rodan. Hours pass and Rodan does not return. They begin to worry. Teresia, filled with fear, recalls that Rodan said he would hunt nearby and return early. Suddenly, they hear noise from the hunters outside. They are carrying Rodan, who has been injured during the hunt. Alan and his mother rush outside and help bring him into the house. Greta explains that Rodan is only alive because they used a healing herb on him. Everyone knows how expensive healing herbs are, so Greta explains how they obtained one. He reveals that Rodan took a boar's horn head-on, making the injury severe. Greta urges the other hunters to leave so the family can have privacy. However, the remaining hunters begin shouting that Rodan was injured because of the commoners. After the hunters leave, Teresia and Alan ask how the commoners were involved. Greta explains that the commoners joined the hunt that day. They wanted boar meat but had no means of obtaining it, since they could only buy it when serfs sold it to them. They were advised to hunt for themselves, but they refused because they knew how dangerous it was. When they heard that there was a legendary serf, Rodan, they assumed they would be safe and decided to join. Sir Zenoff had spoken about Rodan during a gathering, which fueled their confidence. When Rodan and Greta learned that the commoners would accompany them, they objected, but they could not stop it because it was the chief's command. During training, the commoners refused to participate and simply sat around. During the hunt, they were given a small task to distract the boars, but they panicked and abandoned their duty. When a boar was about to attack one of them, Rodan jumped in to save him. Unfortunately, Rodan was struck instead. Greta explains that they eventually defeated the boar and promises to bring Rodan's share the following day. He then leaves. This experience makes Alan feel that he has to be more responsible toward his family. The following day, he tries to help Teresia take care of his injured father, but she tells him not to worry. Thankfully, Rodan regains consciousness. In his confusion, he shouts about the boar, but they calm him down. Greta returns around the same time with the boar and is relieved to see Rodan alive. Before leaving, Greta advises Rodan to stay home and rest, promising that the hunters will take care of his family during the summer. After Greta leaves, Alan feels useless. He realizes that since coming to this world, he is focused only on leveling up his power and has not truly helped his family. Even if his life feels like a game, it is real life for the people around him. He has a family to protect. With renewed resolve, he goes to fetch water. When others question whether he can carry the bowls, he answers confidently. To his surprise, he carries the water home. As he pours the water, he reveals that he has started using his buffs to increase his physical strength so he can help his family rather than focus on leveling up. Family comes first. Teresia sees how well he has done and praises him warmly. Alan then tells her that he wants to follow Greta the next day to learn how to harvest potatoes. The following day, he joins Greta, who is shocked to see Alan harvesting potatoes effortlessly with one hand. After a full day of work, Alan gathers 3 barns of potatoes. However, half will be taken by the chief, a harsh reminder of a serf's life. This means Alan must find a better way to support his family during the summer. As Rodan gradually recovers, the commoner responsible for the incident comes to apologize. While Alan feels the apology should not be accepted, Rodan forgives him. Other hunters also visit to cheer Rodan up. Thinking of a way to get food for his family, Alan decides to set a trap using his creations to catch a wild bird. He hides among the leaves as the chappies create the trap. A wild bird appears, but the chappies are not strong enough and are defeated. Alan considers running away, but he checks his stats and steels himself. He has a family to protect and feed. He confronts the bird, but it throws him aside. Left with no choice, he summons his first creation, Fido, but the bird destroys it as well. He tries to fight again, but he is too weak. He realizes that with all his creations destroyed, he has lost his buffs. Before he can recover, the wild bird attacks again. At that moment, Alan believes he may not survive. Do you think he will survive?